It's particularly a pleasure to have a representative of the Singapore government here on the occasion of our 50th anniversary. But we're going to talk a little bit about something a little different. We're not going to talk about INSEAD, but we're going to talk about Singapore instead. It's been interesting to us. We've had a series of conversations over the course of the day about different aspects of the relationship between business and government. We've talked about how the regulator has been working to either change the nature of the regulator's relationship with business or changing the role in the last session that we talked about that the government was going to play in business. But what we haven't had a conversation about yet is about what do governments do to make nation states better places in which to live, work, compete. Singapore has, for the last God knows how many years, been consistently ranked as one of the best places to do business. And one of the aspects that has made it such a good place to do business is arguably the set of relationships which are enjoyed between government, labor, and business. It's a word that is used in Singapore quite often called tripartism. And in the course of his political career, Mr. Lim Swee Say has been very much at the front of that tripartism. So before we get started, I wanted to invite Mr. Lim to say a little bit about what is tripartism from the Singaporean context, why is this unique, what makes it special, how do we understand it? Please, Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Narayan and friends. First of all, congratulations to INSEAD on your 50th anniversary. I've been to INSEAD, this campus, I think this is my third visit. Each visit gets better and better. And today I'm really very honored to have a chance to have this dialogue with this distinguished gathering. Now, tripartism. Tripartism in Singapore is something that we take very seriously because we believe that tripartism, in fact, is one of the few unique advantages of Singapore. But instead of telling you about tripartism in theory, I thought I would share with you what happened, what did tripartism, how did tripartism make a difference to the Singaporean economy, to the Singaporean workers during this global recession. When the crisis started late last year, it was very obvious to Singapore that firstly, the Singapore economy will be very badly hit because we are a small economy, open, we are export-oriented, so we survive based on the global market. So when the global crisis hit us, we knew firstly it's going to be very bad. Secondly, we also knew that the employment market, the job market, will be of great concern to the workers of Singapore. At a point in time, the International Labour Organization did 3 forecasts in terms of the employment outlook for 2009 because the situation was so uncertain that they could not come up with just one, so they came up with 3. They said that the most optimistic scenario is that the world may lose about 25 million jobs. And the most pessimistic scenario was 51 million. And the most realistic scenario was 35 million. Now, as far as the Singaporean workers are concerned, whether it's 25 million or 35 million or 51 million, they are just too many millions to handle. And basically, we decided in Singapore that we have to do something different from the rest of the world. So the Singapore government, the National Trade Union Congress, as well as the Singapore National Employer Federation, the 3 tripartite partners, we came together, and it was in November last year. And we decided that we would handle the downturn differently from the rest of the world. And our position was that the rest of the world are all going to cut jobs to save costs. In USA, in Europe, in Asia, all over the world, they're all going to cut jobs to save costs. But in Singapore, as tripartite partners, we make that collective commitment to each other that we're going to do it the other way around. We are going to cut costs to save jobs in Singapore. So we set ourselves 3 targets. Firstly, we must minimize the level of retrenchment in Singapore, save jobs. And secondly, knowing that no matter how hard we try, we can never save every job. So there will be workers who will be affected by retrenchment. Then the second line of defense is we must make sure that not every retrenched worker will end up being an unemployed worker. So in other words, if you lose your jobs, I must do whatever I can to retrain you, to bring you back to employment again. And thirdly, as we go through a downturn, on the one hand, we'll save jobs, but yet at the same time, knowing that saving jobs means a lot of excess manpower in the economy, in the companies, in the industries. We have to make use of the downturn to upgrade the skills, the capabilities of these workers. So these were the three targets set during the downturn. Cut costs to save jobs, minimize unemployment, and lastly, get ready for the upturn. Today, almost a year later, we are happy to say that firstly, in the areas of retrenchment started in the first quarter of this year, and once the program came to play, by the second quarter, we saw a sharp drop in retrenchment by 70%. And by the third quarter, fourth quarter, in fact, this year, we're likely to see a fairly low level of retrenchment for the whole year. So we achieved that target. Unemployment. Globally, ILO turned out to be wrong because their most pessimistic forecast was 51 million job losses. But as it turned out, by the end of this year, the world is expected to see 59 million, not 51 million. So even the most pessimistic forecast by ILO in November last year turned out to be not pessimistic enough. So we're going to see 59 million. Global unemployment is expected to reach 7.4%. In USA, it's now 9.8%. In Europe, 8.9%. OECD countries, 30 member countries, 8.5%. But in Singapore, notwithstanding that our economy was so export-oriented, unemployment went up from 2.5% end of last year to 3.3% first quarter of this year, to 3.3% second quarter of this year, and just recently, the third quarter result came out, 3.4%. So today, we still enjoy one of the lowest unemployment rates in the world. More importantly, workers during this downturn were being retrained because the government not only came up with a program to save jobs, but at the same time, we provided a program to encourage employers to retrain their workers. So for example, any company that send their workers for retraining, 90% of the cost of training, both in terms of training fees as well as the absentee payroll, are funded by the government. And the total package costs the government about more than $5 billion. So in conclusion, I would say this, that tripartism in Singapore is unique because at the end of the day, we look at two angles, basically. Firstly, tripartism in Singapore must be pro-business. Let me make it very clear. Tripartism in Singapore must be pro-business because if we are not pro-business, then we cannot be one of the most attractive places on earth to do business. Then there'll be no investment, there'll be no job, then workers can't have a good employment. So tripartism in Singapore must be pro-business. But yet at the same time, tripartism in Singapore must recognize that Singapore is not just an economy. Singapore is a nation. So in other words, as we continue to be as pro-business as we can, tripartism in Singapore must also be pro-worker. And the two, being pro-business and pro-workers, are two sides of the same coin. And that coin is the coin of nation building. So what we're trying to do here is to build a nation, a small nation, but a very important nation for the Singaporeans. So we're doing everything we can, right, to make sure we are pro-business, to grow our economy, to create jobs, and at the same time, pro-worker, to ensure that Singaporeans have good job, good pay, able to live a good life. So therefore, in GIS, I think that's what is unique about tripartism in Singapore. We work together, we are pro-business, we are pro-worker, and as a result, we're able to get through a downturn with minimum pain to businesses, to the workers, and yet at the same time, when the upturn is back, hopefully, we're among the first to be off the block because we have been investing in the upgrading of capability during the downturn.
Mr., that sounds absolutely magnificent. I mean, you have employment rates which economies would kill for, 3.3, 3.4%. So would it be fair to ask exactly What did you do? Did you provide incentives to employers? Did you make them an offer they couldn't refuse? I don't know. How did this work?
Yeah, okay, basically what we did was that we knew that with the global downturn, many businesses are going to have assessment power because when your demand drops, obviously workload will drop. So for example, one factory in Singapore, it's a Japanese company, they've been in Singapore for more than 30 years. The production utilization dropped from 100% to 15%. So when this happened in January this year, the company was in serious trouble because with a 15% loading, they have 85% spare capacity. So the management received instruction from the Japanese headquarters that you have to retrench at least 30% of your workers, 30%. And this company is unionized, so they talked to the union. They said, look, we received instruction, we need to let go 30% of the worker. So we're talking to them to see how best to phase out the retrenchment as much as we can. And that was in January. And fortunately, that was the time when the government decided to subsidize wages up to 12% of the payroll. So in other words, what the government was telling the companies was that if you have up to 12% assessment power, instead of retrenching them, the government would subsidize the wages. You keep them. Why do we want companies to keep their workers? Because we believe that as Singapore economy more and more so become a knowledge-based economy, the workers will become more knowledge workers, higher skill workers. So if we actually force the companies, not force, if the circumstances forces a company to let go of the workers, later on when the upturn is back, they will have a hard time recruiting workers, retrain workers. So we think that it's important to try to preserve the capability in our economy, to minimize the damages done to the structure of the economy. So we told the company, say, okay, now with this jobs credit, you can now hopefully minimize the retrenchment. The company said, look, at 15% loading, I have no idea how long it will take for me to actually, for the market to come back. So I can hold on to workers for 6 months, I can hold on to workers for 1 year, but beyond that, it's going to be very difficult. So they were still very reluctant to hold on to the assessment power. Then that's where the second program came in. So we said, look, we know you hold the workers, the assess workers, then why don't you send them for retraining under a program called SPUR? And the combination of job credit and SPUR, we managed to convince this company, and what he did, this company decided that instead of retrenching 30% of workers, they retrench only 10%. So they have a 20% this assessment power they kept. And what they did was, within a company, they identified the best 20% of their workers, the best 20%, not the assessed workers, but the best workers they can find within the company. They send this 20% of their workers to go for retraining. Yeah. And as a result, when the business came back, this company obviously was surprised with the speed of the recovery. But more importantly, having retrained the best 20% of their workers, the company today is able to grow again. And what this company is doing now is that they are repositioning their production plant in Singapore because the product that they produce before the economic downturn wouldn't work anymore. Because after the downturn, now they have other competitors coming up. Right? Because in Singapore, what we say is that there are competitors who are better than us in this world. We compete against them by being cheaper than them. Right? So if you're better than me, I try to be cheaper than you. Then we have competitors who are cheaper than us, then we try to be better than them. So we try to be cheaper than better, better than cheaper. That's how we create a space for ourselves. All right? And I think that works very well up till now. But as the result of this downturn, the world has changed. The better competitors are becoming cheaper. The cheaper competitors are becoming better. So the only way for us to continue to survive and grow is to become cheaper, better, and faster. So in Singapore, if you hear this term called CBF economy, this is what we meant. A cheaper, a better, a faster economy. To be cheaper means to be more productive. To be better means to be more capable. To be faster means to be more adaptable. And that's what this company did. So during the downturn, they upskill the workers, they reskill the workers, they multi-skill the workers. So as a result, we are now able to run hopefully, as a CBF economy. So I would say that I think on the whole, this is the kind of situation happening.
Excellent, excellent.